Well, I was in a lot of different schools because, again, the first 8 years of my life, I was basically in a different home every year, year and a half. And then after I lost my mom, I came, I was back in the South Ward. And then my grandmother, when I was in 7th grade, put me in a small Catholic school in Hillside for 7th and 8th grade. So I was in public school until 7th and 8th grade. And then in 8th grade, I got the scholarship to go to Seton Hall Prep. And so I was in every environment, public schools primarily, small Catholic school, and then a large Catholic school, Seton Hall Prep. And the experience when I was in the city, was because at a young age, you just do what your teachers tell you. So I just knew we played, we had fun. I loved my classmates, and I knew we had teachers who loved us, both when I was in Newark, when I was outside of Newark, and they always pushed us to be the best that we could be. When I got to Seton Hall Prep, it was definitely much more rigorous. Everything was much more rigorous. I mean, the teachers were focused and precise about everything. Every comma, every semicolon, every em-dash, every parenthetical. And really the education I got there really, I believe, gave me the foundation that built upon what I had K through 8. But the high school education I had really prepared me, for where I am today. The teachers I had were brilliant. They were hardworking. They were smart. They loved the kids, and because they loved the kids, they held us accountable for everything. I still remember to this day a long paper I wrote back in like 11th or 12th grade, and the teacher liked large parts of it, but he would talk about, why did you use a semicolon here and not an em-dash, and why did you em-dash and not a colon? And if you want to emphasize what comes after the em-dash, then you might want to use a colon. And so he was very precise on everything. And so that attention to detail, that preparation is what enabled me to be successful in college and beyond. It was all in that foundation I had, K through 8 and then in high school. And I think young people in Newark are doing a whole lot more outside of school than I had to deal with. So when I grew up, we had our issues. Crack trade was strong in the 80s when I grew up. We had carjackings. But I was never worried about being killed. I mean, I might, you might get into a fight, and sometimes you fought and won, sometimes you fought and lost, sometimes you ran, you figured out what you need to do based upon the situation. But I was never worried about being killed. And we didn't have organized gangs in my neighborhood the way we have now. I mean, we had kind of street crews who would get into trouble here and there, but it's not like we have now. We have organized gangs that are involved in crimes of violence and young people being shot and killed. Just Tuesday night, I was with a friend of mine who her son had just been shot 15 times on Tuesday. And so when you just talk to our kids, this affects them psychologically, where they are fearful to walk around in their neighborhoods. And when you have that sort of kind of psychosis in your brain and in your mind, that affects you wherever you go. It affects you when you come to the school. It affects you when you're walking to school. It affects you when you're leaving home from school. It affects you when it's time to think about homework, but you have other things in your head. We have kids dealing with post-traumatic stress because a classmate has been killed, a brother has been killed, a father has been killed, an uncle has been killed, a cousin has been killed. So all of that kind of psychological trauma that our kids are carrying with them, that oftentimes, because even when I lost my mom, we had no counseling. We just kept living. And I'm sure that's not the most healthy way to be. And so that just stuff stays in you, and it comes out in a lot of different ways. And so these kids have a whole lot more they're dealing with in their communities. They have a lot more violence. And also in the schools, there's a lot more upheaval as well, given some of the things happening in our school system. So I didn't necessarily have some of those challenges. We didn't have the public charter sector, when I was growing up. So you didn't have some of the challenges that's met in terms of what the district needs to do to improve itself. So, but the fundamental difference I see is what's happening in these communities and what's happening in these neighborhoods and what's happening in our families. And I never believe in either or. I'm a father, I'm a husband. My kids have been in every sector. They've been in a traditional public preschool. They were in a private school, now they're in a public charter school. I have the same questions wherever I go. First, my baby's gonna be safe, that's first and foremost. Two, do you believe in the limitless potential of our kids? And that's fundamental, because a lot of people say they do, but they don't act like they do. So when we hear stuff like, well, not everybody's college material, and there's nothing wrong with vocational trades, those are very important. But in communities like Newark, we start talking about that in 7th and 8th and 9th grade. In other communities, that's after we've seen if we can get you to college, then we look at other options. And so do you believe in the limitless potential of these kids? Are you then prepared to have a curriculum and staff that can execute on that belief you have? And so those are questions I ask for any and every sector, traditional public school, public charter school, or otherwise. And I believe they ought to be able to work collaboratively to make sure that kids receive the best education. So my upbringing has been in all those sectors too. So I do think my thoughts may be rooted in some of my experiences, but my experiences have been in all. I had Mrs. Jones when I was in 4th and 5th and 6th grade in a traditional public school, who was amazing, who loved kids, who worked her butt off, and was one of the best teachers I've had. I also had Mr. Benkowski and Mr. Dawson when I was at a private school, Seton Hall Prep, who loved the kids, who were unbelievably rigorous, and who worked very hard to make sure kids could fulfill their potential. So I think this either or choice is false. It's ridiculous. I believe it's politically motivated by those who have a political interest in seeing communities divided. No parent thinks that way. No child thinks that way. Most educators don't think that way. And I don't think that way either.